originally they were gonna buy our house.
Ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The hour is 7 p.m. And as mayor, I hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Laconia City Council scheduled for February 12, 2018 at this hour. As always, we will begin our meeting with a salute to the American flag. I would ask you to please rise and join Councilor Henry Lippman in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For the record, I will note that the minutes to tonight's meeting are being kept by City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, and I would ask that she please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney.
Here.
Counselor Bounds.
Councilor Bounds is absent this evening for, he's under the weather.
Counselor Littman.
Here.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Present.
Counselor Baldick.
Here.
Mayor Egley.
Present.
Counselor.
Thank you. Let the record show that 5 of 6 councilors and the mayor are present tonight, and we have a quorum for this meeting. Also note for the record that we are joined at the head table tonight by City Manager Scott Myers and by the City Finance Director Donna Woodeman. First order of business tonight is acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Tonight we have the minutes before us for January 22nd. And does anyone have any corrections or additions to those minutes? In lieu of any changes being suggested by members of the council, I will declare that the minutes to January 22nd, 2018 meeting are accepted as submitted by the clerk. Okay. Let's see, we need to go on to consent and action items. There are 3 before us tonight. As I've said at previous meetings, these are typically requests being made that have been previously approved by councils in the same form, and there are no major changes for this year, and therefore they don't merit listing on under new business. The first one is on page 15 of your packet, and it is a request from the Weirs Action Committee to waive the special events fee for them for 2008 Laconia Motorcycle Week. For those of you who don't know, this has to do with the fact that we have traditionally allowed the Weirs Action Committee to use the Endicott Rock Park as, they use it as a parking lot for motorcycles and whatnot and keep the proceeds. So this has been happening year after year after year, and nothing new. And a motion would be in order to approve the request from the Weirs Action Committee to waive the special events fee for their 2018 Laconia Motorcycle Week fundraiser at Endicott Rock Park.
Moved.
I'm sorry, moved by Councilor Bolduc, second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 affirmative votes, that motion carries. The second item is on page 17, and it is a request from Laconia Kiwanis Club for fundraising on city park property, namely they use a Peachy Park and the Wow Trail is what they're using this for. Or wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, I'm confused here. Let me back up a second. This is Rogers Ride we're talking about here. The other one, I got one step ahead. The fundraiser is the third item. So this is traditionally the last Sunday of August. The Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club hosts a ride in honor of their former member Roger Ballantyne to raise money for charity. So a motion would be in order to approve the use of the Rotary Gazebo. That's Rotary Park next to Belknap Mill on Sunday, August 26, 2018, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the Laconia Kiwanis Club for Rogers Ride fundraising event. Moved by Councilor Hamel, who's a frequent participant in that event. Seconded by Councilor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in affirmative, that motion carries. Thank you. Lastly, on consent and action, and this is where we get to the WOW Trail, I think, is a request from the Lakes Region Vineyard Church for fundraising on city property. That's on page 18 of your packet, and the details are on following pages. I'm not sure there's I think we have a motion outlined for us there, but anyway.
Page 24, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
Page 24 for the motion?
24? 24, that's very long, okay. So yes, this has to do with O-Pee-Chee Park and the WOW Trail they use for a fundraising event on that day. So motion to approve the use of the O-Pee-Chee Track and Field parking lot and the WOW Trail on June 2nd, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a rain date of June 9, 2018, for the Love 146 Run Walk fundraising event. I have a motion to approve that. Counselor Bolduc, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Okay, thank you. And we are through consent and action items. All right, now we have reached the appropriate time for anyone in the audience tonight to comment to council on any matter that is not on tonight's agenda. So this is only for matters at this point in time that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Interviews. We have lots of interviews tonight. And we're going to start with Aaron Bassett. And Aaron is seeking appointment as a regular member of the Library Board of Trustees for a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2021. Mr. Bassett, welcome.
Thank you.
And please tell us where you live and why you would like to be a library trustee.
I'm over on Fenton Ave, right off of Pleasant Street. I have 3 young kids at home who love the library. I've also been a reader my whole life. I think libraries face a lot of challenges from the flow of information coming from new sources that didn't used to be around, and there's some interesting challenges and potential to take it in interesting directions.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Bassett or comments?
I'd just like to
All right,
thank you
Councilor
for
Bolduc.
coming forward. For the,
What's that?
thank you for coming forward.
Oh, I'm glad to.
All right, Counselor Hamel.
Aaron, have you been to any of their meetings at all, or?
I've been to 2 of the Library Board of Trustees meetings so far.
You have?
I started late last year, but then the holidays were crazy and I missed a few, so.
Okay, but you have been to them, and
Yep, I've been to a couple.
is there anything that you'd bring to the table that might be different, or?
I have a
Something
background in technology, so I know one of the first meetings I was at was discussing the moving some of the library infrastructure over here to the server, the virtualization stuff over here. So I actually participated in that conversation a little bit, and I think I asked some good questions. And I'm also pretty good at asking stupid questions, so
We all are
that's
at
what
that,
I
so.
try to do.
So the good questions, did they agree with you or disagree?
Well, they weren't opinions; they were questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Bassett, I will say to you, same thing, heads up to all the other applicants in the audience tonight, so I just have to say it once, and that is that under the rules of procedure for the council, we do interviews on one meeting and have elections for appointment at the following meeting. So we will handle, as a matter of business, all of these applications in terms of a yes or no vote, at our next meeting. You are not required to attend that meeting. You may, obviously, if you wish to, but it's not necessary for you to be there typically. Okay? Thank you for coming. Next up is Bruce Knuer, seeking appointment to an alternate member position on the Library Board of Trustees for a one-year term expiring at the end of March 2019. Welcome, Mr. Knuer.
Thank you, Mayor Engler. And,
Same question to you.
I stood before the council about 8 months ago. There was an opening for the alternate library trustee, and I said to the council then I'd be happy to serve in that capacity, knowing in particular at times having alternates available saves a meeting. I have been able to attend, I believe, every meeting since then, since last June, and have had an opportunity to be seated, I may be mistaken, but all but maybe one of the meetings. And as I said to the chairman, realizing this was a temporary assignment until now, that I'd be happy to continue serving again as an alternate. My contributions in the last few months took an unexpected turn. I love the library, as Aaron mentioned. I have one son who has been the library page for 3.5 years and has now graduated to working for the city of Laconia at the library. So I have a particular attachment to the things of the library. And I'm particularly interested in the work of making the library as a place to visit, something that attracts future patrons, and that would be the children of the parents who bring them, and we hope that they become lifelong lovers. And forgive me, I'm very old school. I know Aaron will take us into the future. I'm going to help as I can drag along the past because I love books.
Great. What ward do you live in, Mr. Kern?
I am in Councillor Lippman's Ward 3.
Ward 3, okay, thank you. We just like to have an idea where geographically people are located. Any questions or comments for Mr. Knuer?
He answered them.
He answered them.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for coming forward.
You're quite welcome.
All right, thank you for coming tonight. Next up is James Ole Anderson, seeking appointment to a regular member position on the library, reappointment, I should say, to a regular member position on the Library Board of Trustees for a 3-year term expiring in March 2021. Welcome, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you. Live in Old North Main Street. I'm in Henry's Ward. Used to be in Ward 1, but you guys moved the line to the other side of the street, so now I'm in Henry's Ward. I got traded. I've been on the board, I think, 9 years, 9 years, something like that. I've enjoyed it. I look forward to serving again if you want me. If you don't, Aaron, I'm sure will do a good job. Bruce is an excellent alternate, so I have no problem.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson? 9 years and counting on the Library Board of Trustees.
You're still gonna, you'd like to be appointed.
Oh, sure, sure. I believe that I owe it to the city I live in to serve in some capacity. Right now, this is the capacity. If you see a better capacity for me, I'll be happy to move. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's a worthwhile endeavor. It's important, I think, to the people of Laconia. We have about 10,000 people that use the library every month. We circulate about 10,000 items every month. It's a busy place. It's a well-stocked library. We have a good staff. It's a good library. We as citizens of Laconia should be proud of it. We should use it more if possible. I would like to see everyone in the city have library cards. We all try to recruit library cards whenever we have opportunities, but it's, some ways it's a hidden gem. A lot of people don't use it, and they really should. It is a gem. I think other cities are very jealous of what we have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, Kimberly Donasi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, that's very close.
Seeking appointment to a regular member position on the Library Board of Trustees, reappointment, I should say, for a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2021. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, goodness. I live in Ward 1. As of next month, I will have completed 2 terms on the library board, so a total of 6 years. And I'm very interested in continuing on for another term. I work with a great group of people on the library board. They're energetic, they're dynamic, they're thoughtful, and I would like the opportunity to continue along that path. Any questions?
Any questions or comments for Mrs. Donasi?
Just thank you for coming forward.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up, we have Catherine Tokars seeking appointment to an alternate member position on the Heritage Commission for a 3-year term expiring. This is reappointment again. I keep missing that word. Heritage Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2021. Welcome, Mrs. Tokars.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if I may be out of order for just a moment.
Mr. Moriarty?
Thank you. John Moriarty, Ward 4, Library Board of Trustees. I don't know how your information looks in front of you, but I wanted to just add 2.5 cents tonight that we have 4 openings on the Board of Trustees and 4 applicants. So hopefully you'll consider saying yes to all 4 of them. We'd be delighted. We have a bank president, an attorney, a CPA, someone who's fantastic with the building, someone with state government experience. We have a very well-rounded board and appreciate you saying yes to all 4 of them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mrs. Tokars. Sorry you got interrupted there.
Okay,
Go
Catherine
ahead.
Tokars.
You live
I live Ward 6,
6? Okay.
Councilor Baldick, Massachusetts Avenue. I'm looking for a reappointment
Can you bend the microphone down to you? There you go.
to the Heritage Commission. This will be my 2nd appointment for a 3-year term. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to serve the city. And I also agree with Mr. Anderson that that's our duty to do that. Obviously, you all feel the same way. And I would appreciate your support in this reappointment. At the same time, we also have 2 openings for alternates. So I would like to make a plea to the people who are here in this room and the people who watch this that if you really want to be a part of your city, to help us to preserve our heritage, our structures, the way we live, what we like to look at, like the library and the train station, please consider putting your hat in the ring to be a member of the Heritage Commission.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Tokars? Comments?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Appreciate your service. Thank you for coming tonight. Next up is Deanna Geyer, seeking reappointment to a regular member position on the Parks and Recreation Commission for a 3-year term to expire in 2021. Welcome, Mrs. Geyer.
Hi, thank you. I live up on Meredith Center Road in Ward 1, and I am looking for reappointment for the Parks and Rec Commission. It's been a great first 3 years. It's been wonderful. I've learned a lot. Coaching 26 years in the city, our youth being able to use the parks and helping bring those kids forward has been great. And I've learned a lot working with Kevin and his crew and how we can continue to bring in kids from other towns to also play for us, which has been a great opportunity for kids that don't have that option in their cities. So that's been great. So I'd love to come back.
Great. We appreciate your service.
Thanks.
Any questions or comments?
Thanks for coming forward.
Thank you.
Deanna does a great job there. too.
Yeah.
I've been to several of the meetings, and she always participates and comes with
True
knowledge.
asset to the community. I think we all agree on that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Guy Pederzani. Do I have that correct? He's seeking reappointment to a regular position on the Parks and Recreation Commission, also for a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2021.
I live at 65 Gale Avenue, which is Ward 3, which seems to be a very popular ward, I guess. I've really enjoyed the past 3 years working in the Park and Rec. From this side, I've spent many years using the facilities, and it's nice to be able to
support the facilities and work with other people to use them and to help maintain them. And everything else I was going to say, Dee already took my words right out of my mouth. So, but I've enjoyed it. And I hope I could spend another 3 years doing it.
Well, we really appreciate your service, sir, and thank you for coming. Is there anyone who has any questions or comments?
The only comment is Guy does a good job over there also. He's comes informed and he's a good guy there.
Thank you.
All right. Counselor Hamel is our representative liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission, so if you've got his endorsement, you're in good shape.
Yes.
Okay. Lastly, we have William Stewart, who is seeking an appointment to a regular member position on the Planning Board for a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2021. Is Mr. Stewart here?
Missed one. Landry, Richard Landry.
Skip one.
Did I skip one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Richard Landry.
We'll do Richard Landry first. Is Richard Landry here?
Yes.
Yep, Dick, hi. Seeking reappointment to a regular position on the Putnam Fund for a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2033. Welcome,
Yes,
Dick.
hello, thank you. I'm a resident of Ward 3, and I've been on the Putnam Fund for almost 10 years on the advisory committee, and I have
Is there
enjoyed
anybody
it.
on the Putnam Fund who hasn't been there at least 10 years?
And it's been a great experience. I'm still learning, but I'm enjoying it, and I'd very much like to continue.
Well, we appreciate your service very much. Any questions or comments for Mr. Landry?
Thanks for coming forward.
Okay.
All right, thank you for coming tonight. All right, now we get to William Stewart, seeking appointment to a regular member position on the Planning Board for a 3-year term expiring at the end of June. Is Mr. Stewart here, please? No, Mr. Stewart, all right, so we'll put off that interview to a future meeting. And move on to nominations, appointments, and elections. You'll recall at the last meeting, we interviewed Peter Stewart, who is seeking appointment to a regular member position as the registered architect position on the Building Code Board of Appeals for a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 23. A motion would be in order to appoint Peter Stewart to said position. Moved by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of the nomination of Peter Stewart, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Thank you.
Just need a plumber now, right?
And a fire suppression specialist.
Okay, we are on to presentations. We have one tonight, and that is from regarding pavement management studies. And I recognize Wes Anderson, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Tonight's presentation is the first of 2 or possibly 3 on the pavement management program, which is basically a system for managing road maintenance. In the case of the city of Laconia, it's to efficiently and effectively maintain Laconia's roads. The objective of pavement management programs is to keep good roads good, establish expectations for a road system based on funding levels, and convert it to a multi-year capital improvement program. Tonight's presentation, the first step, is the pavement management study, which will be presented by Tony Garrow of the Beta Group. After Tony does his presentation, I will talk a little bit in regards to converting the study into the first-year construction plan or the construction plan for this summer, and then review the next steps in the process to institute a pavement management program. Tony?
Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on tonight. It's been a pleasure working with Wes and Krista on this project. Let me just get, is this going to pop up on the, one sec. Okay.
Only one here. Oh, we got all kinds of them. All right. Yep.
Does it only move forward with the remote, or? No? looks like this. Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. I got the slides up and running. Everyone has a handout as well for this evening. Okay.
Just so you know, the council has it on video on this side as well. So
Okay.
they're looking at it on a screen right
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so we've been working with the city now since the fall. We started the project in September, conducted inspections in October. So that's really setting the stage for what Wes described as now you have the ability now to utilize data to help you make decisions. So the practice of pavement management really is going to help you with the right repair at the right time, and also, extend the life expectancy of that roadway. And I'll get into that more so in the presentation. There we go. So it's just a double tap.
Okay.
Now that I got to figure it out. So you can't do a pavement management presentation without showing a standard deterioration curve. So really the purpose of this slide is to show you and explain that all roadways deteriorate over time. And now the city has a tool to monitor that deterioration and also to help you plan your roadway program, identify different repair strategies, unit costs. But ultimately, the program will provide you with a tool to monitor the condition of the roads. And what this slide is showing here is that over time, roadways, they start at a high rating. All the roadways were evaluated. A 0 to 100 rating was assigned to each roadway. 0 being a roadway in poor condition, 100 being a roadway in essentially perfect condition. But each year, over time, roadways deteriorate. We're having some freeze-thaw cycles now with this warming trend, and now you're going to see potholes. So it's really the freeze-thaw cycles that really contributes to the deterioration, not necessarily the volume of snow. There we go. In terms of the program itself that we set up for the city, it was essentially a 5-step process that we went through, starting in September, like I mentioned. We started with developing a roadway inventory, so that's utilizing available GIS information, mapping information that was available, orthophotography, parcel information, environmental data. But mostly it really focused on the center line of the roadway, that particular layer. We looked at that information, identified the streets that are included in the program. Approximately 80 miles of road are city accepted, so the focus of the program was on those 80 miles of road. Once we established that list of roads for inclusion in the program, then we initiated the field inspection program, which is task 2, which takes up most of the time and most of the budget on the project. It's about a 4 to 5 week effort to inspect all the roadways in the city. From there, we're able to analyze the information and generate existing condition summaries, similar to the document that you have that was provided to you. We can analyze the information several different ways, whether it's through queries or filters within the database. The best way to look at the information, I like looking at it geographically in a GIS or on a GIS map. Once the information was analyzed and essentially approved by Wes and his staff, we moved to the capital planning component of the project, and this now allows you to generate proposed roadway improvements utilizing the information that was made available. And then the last task is where we're heading now, which is the maintenance of the program, which involved a training program and also the installation of the information. So here's a breakdown of the roadways, the roadway characteristics of the city. Like I mentioned, you have about 80 miles of roadway that are city accepted. So the pavement management program or the inspections that we did on the streets focused on those. You also have other roadways that are considered emergency lane miles. Those were also evaluated. But all of the roadways, whether it's accepted, state, or if it's private, the information is all incorporated into the database. So as things change, you have the ability to flip a road from an unaccepted to an accepted status, and it'll become part of the program. So it's all inclusive of all the roadways within the city. This is an example of the interface. So the program is Microsoft Office based. So if you have Office, a lot of people have Office on their desktop. So that's a database program that is typically available to most public sector people. So that's why we built it along that platform. So the program's non-proprietary and there's no cost associated with the software. It also links to GIS ArcView software. So that's also something the city already had, so there was no additional cost associated with that as well. I mentioned earlier a road condition rating for each roadway was established. So that's a 0 to 100 rating. So that was all done in the field by evaluating each segment of road. So for instance, if a roadway as a whole could be 1 mile, but you could have segments that make up that mile. So each individual segment was evaluated. Each segment was then assigned that 0 to 100 rating. Typical information that you'd see was collected. You have the road striping, road width, length, if there's sidewalks, then the deterioration information that leads to that 0 to 100 rating, patching, potholes, alligator cracking, longitudinal cracking, standard distresses that you see, and we followed industry standards in terms of establishing that 0 to 100 rating. Oop, go back. That's not good. I just figured out how to go forward. Now I need to go back. There we go. Okay, so upon completing the inspection program, then we worked with Wes and Krista on establishing repair strategies and unit costs. So these need to be real to the city. So the information that's populated in the database is really data or costs that you're seeing from contractors, different repairs that are appropriate for the city. And these are what are called repair bands, and you can see that starting at the bottom, you go from 0 to 50, and you can see that's a rehabilitation, reclamation type category, all the way to really where there's no maintenance required. Those are roadways that are in a very good condition. So these different repair bands are really is the premise of the program, is where now you're identifying repair strategies and then associated costs, so you can start to do some planning and see what your backlog of improvements are.
Are these ratios just for example, or are they actual?
No, these are the actual unit prices that are plugged into the program at this point.
Right now.
Right
so
now.
50% of our roads, if I'm reading that correctly, need reclamation and reconstruction.
Not necessarily. That right there, that rating is 0 to 50. So if a roadway fell in that 0 to 100 rating, if it was in a 0 to 50, then it fell into that. There's a slide coming ahead that'll break down the actual distribution. One point I do want to make is that the costs that you see here are curb-to-curb improvements, so that does not account for underground utilities or ADA improvements that are associated with these projects as well. Here's a breakdown, so you can see the 80 miles of road. The network RSR is a 73.8, which would be considered a good rating. We see ratings from as low as 58 to as high as 84. I'd say the midpoint is typically 68 to about 75, somewhere in that range. So really, Laconia is really smack in the middle of that, of what we typically see from a community.
Not this week.
Yeah. Now, this was information from the fall. So now, I mean, there could be some calibration to the data that we may need to do, and we'll address that as part of the training program that we'll do in March. But that could be where we need to make some adjustments to the roads. So that's something that we typically do on these projects. Here's some examples of the RSR, or the 0 to 100 ratings. Gilbert Street, for example, scored a rating of a 3, which is extremely low. Cottage Street at 21. You can see as I go through these slides, you're going to see the rating go up and the condition of the roadway improve. So these are just representative examples, really essentially within each of those bands that I presented earlier. Ultimately, you have North Main Street, which is a 99. And you may ask, why is it a 99? Why is it not a 100? Well, at the time of the inspection, it was a 100. But now there's been time since we did the inspection, so the way the program operates, it has a built-in deterioration curve. So over time, the roadway will deteriorate. And for instance, it's a roadway that's a 100, say on June 1st, 2017. In 2018 in June, it'll be 2 points less. It's typical about 2 points per year is what we see on deterioration. Here is a summary of the repairs. You can see the approximate number, a little over $1 million. And this is really, the purpose of this is really just to provide a guide in terms of what it may take to improve your roadways up to a 100. It's really, theoretically, that's not possible to do all that in one season, but it's just a guide to know that curb-to-curb improvements, you're looking at around $11 million just for estimating purposes. And again, that doesn't include sidewalks or curb ramps or underground utilities.
That would bring every street in the city
it would bring that roadway up to a more acceptable level of service. Approximately, it would be 100 or somewhere in that 80 to 100 range. It would depend on what type of repair that you would do.
It costs $11 million to bring every city street up to 80 or better.
Yeah, and that depends on what type of repair. So some of that's crack sealing and things like that. So you're not talking like a full depth reclamation of that many road miles. Here's a breakdown by functional class. So we like to break the information down by road priority. As we get closer to capital planning, we want to see what is the distribution across our roadway network in terms of the roadway importance to the city. So it's really just another way to analyze the information and look and see how you're making out with respect to your main roadways within the city. It's important as part of the process to establish some target ranges. So we look at the functional classification of each roadway, and then we've established averages for those functional classifications and then some target ratings for those. So it's important as part of the pavement management process to not just look at where you're at, but let's look at where we want to be moving forward. And this is when you get into the capital improvement planning process. So that's something that most recently what Wes has been working on and developing a prioritized list of projects. Now you can utilize this information to develop that list. Ideally, you're working within the confines of your budget, so you want to maximize that budget, utilize the data to help you as a tool. There's an analysis that we call a cost-benefit value analysis, or CBV. So that's taking another look at the information from a priority standpoint. The RSR is important. That's identifying the type of repair and the estimated costs associated with that repair. But what the CBV does is it looks at the importance of that roadway to the community, the cost of the improvement, and what that benefit is to the community. So it really provides you with a nice priority list. Typically, the roads on that list are included in the CIP at some point. Not necessarily the first year, but they could be included over the span of that capital plan, which could be anywhere from 3 to 10 years. Capital planning also includes forecasting. And this is really probably one of the more critical aspects of the capital planning or the project. At this juncture, you realize we have a certain amount of money that's available to us. If we continue to spend at this rate, this is what's going to happen potentially to our roadway. Now, this is all based on a hypothetical model that's built within the program. So sometimes, Mother Nature doesn't necessarily agree. And that deterioration that I mentioned earlier, that approximately 2 points, could in some winter seasons, when you get a severe freeze-thaw cycle, could be more severe than the 2 points per year. So this is based on a hypothetical model. It's a model that we've developed working in we're working in over 100 communities in New England. So we're utilizing data that we have available to us from those 100 communities in New England. New England's unique. in terms of the severe winters that we have. And now in the spring, we'll have those freeze-thaw cycles with potholes popping through and what that can do to your roadway condition.
So
But
if I'm reading this
sorry, go ahead.
correctly, if we continue to spend $1 million a year on roads, we'll end up with 74, almost overall grade of almost 75. But if we upped it by $400,000 a year, we would improve it by 2%,
That's right.
2 points.
2 points. And getting 2 points is a lot in pavement management world to be able to increase by 2 points. Because what's happening in this model, you're only improving a certain amount of road miles per year, say 10 road miles. But you also have 70 road miles that you're not improving. So those roadways are deteriorating. So you've got deterioration and improvement going on. So to get that improvement of those 2 points is significant.
Councilor Lippman.
So I think we've planned in this current budget for 4 million of road improvements and 4 million in the, roughly in the next year is kind of what our target was. And that would be roughly about 8 out of 11. What's the advantage of moving at that pace versus moving at a slower pace?
The 4 million, does that include, is that curb to curb improvements or does that include? That's everything, all inclusive, the 4 million?
So is it like, I understand somewhere around 20% to add to the
Yep.
cost to consider the other factors from speaking with the manager?
Yes, yeah, it's like in that 20 to 30% range to account for the utilities and ADA, yes. Yep.
So what would be the case to not move at that pace?
Well, I think if you're, with respect to the analysis that was completed,
I mean, I think, you know, as councilors, probably something that we get the most feedback is the condition of our roads, and particularly if you're riding around this time of year, you see it even more so. And I guess from a priority standpoint, in terms of addressing the feel of the city, that improving the roads has been something we've prioritized. But just trying to get a sense of what's the value of moving at a pace that we're talking about moving versus at a slower pace that's here.
so really it's ideally, if by moving at a faster pace, you're going to see your network rating increase. It's going to allow you then potentially to get more into a maintenance mode as well, which down the road you could be saving money by making that investment and spending that $4 million, and at the end of the day, you're saving yourself money by getting ahead.
And that's, I mean, generally how we like to approach things is make good long-run decisions.
We're not committing $4 million a year forever. It was a two-year program a stimulus, if you will.
A stimulus,
for 2
right.
years.
Right, just an influx. Well, that influx can help the program, but once you model, like we could model the actual roadways that make up that improvement and see what that means on the actual program itself.
A
So,
lot of that money is going to go to two specific projects, right?
and that's what I mean by it
Main
might only
arterial.
be a finite number of road miles that is affecting. So that's why it's important to have that finite road miles that it's affecting, but also to distribute other improvements across the network. So you have a balanced approach. Any other questions on this slide?
Just on the savings component about it, is by investing today, what rule of thumb would you suggest we would save over the long term by approaching it that way?
It's a good question. That's it's hard to come up with a number. I can get back to you with that number. I think that's something I'd rather look at the data and respond appropriately through Wes on that. The next slide is showing you a little bit of that. That's why I'm going to pop. If you can see that if you were to spend less money, you're looking at about 800 to maintain your current rating. And then 600, you're going to start to lose ground. And then you're at 1.4 and you're increasing that. So that with respect to the investment you're making and the benefit of that, meaning if you're talking about the $4 million, I think that the $4 million right now is definitely, if you focus that money in the right places on the, you know, the right time, then it could definitely save you money. The exact amount of money, I would have to analyze that with the data and see based on the roadways that are actually programmed in under that scenario.
Just one thing to throw into that mix is not all of our roads are created equal in width either, so a couple of the big projects that Councilor Lippman is speaking about, Court Street is being one of them. You've got 3 turning lanes and shoulders, so the width of that road is going to be far greater and eat up a lot more money than something that's just maybe a neighborhood street that's 2 lanes and no shoulder to it. So when we start to look at the miles of roadway gained, you've got to realize that a mile on Court Street is not going to equal a mile on Roller Coaster Road. They're 2 different animals. So it's not a perfect science in the terms of miles per dollar. It goes into materials and a lot of other things. And as was mentioned, something like Court Street, a lot more drainage, a lot more engineering involved. So 1.4 million going into pavement, you need to add 20 or 30% to that number to get the real number of what it's going to cost for that construction project. And then sidewalks and ADA throw in a different mix to it as well. So a lot of features go above and beyond just the straight miles and the road surface ratings.
That's a good point, sir, because in terms of the analysis that I'm talking about, that accounts for the square yardage. So sometimes it's not just the mileage, but it's the square yardage of the project itself, because that's going to dictate how much material and so forth is going to go into that project. Okay. So once the program now, you reach the point where you're using the information to develop your comprehensive capital improvement plan, now you're to a point where you haven't made an investment in inspecting all the roadways, in the database, in the platform. Now it's really at the training and the maintenance of the program on an annual basis. We estimate it takes probably up to about 20 hours per year to maintain the program. And what I mean by that is projects are completed, you need to update the database. You need to generate new reports. You need to look at how you're making out with your capital plan. Are you getting through 100% of those road projects that you planned in 2018, or are some of those spilling over into 2019, for example? So it's really the updating, the monitoring of the program, but ultimately it's the performance measuring. So that gets back to your question about what is the benefit. So if we're doing a certain amount of repairs, or we're trying out some new technologies like some new surface treatments, microsurfacing, things like that, are we getting the performance out of those roadways that we should? So ultimately, at the end of the day, that's really your benefit. Are you getting the performance out of the work that's been completed? Updating it, the program as new roadways come on, accepted roadways, or the status of roads change. You want to make those changes on an annual basis, so you're working with a complete and accurate data set. And then also you should reassess the roadways. Every 3 to 5 years you should be doing a reassessment or an audit of the roadways, which requires re-inspecting. You could do the network as a whole, or you could divide it up into, say, a third, over a 3-year time frame.
Councilor Hamel.
When you're calculating what Henry was looking for, is there some way that you could let us know that if we stayed with a commitment of 1.4, 1.5 million a year, how many years it would take to, if ever, get to the point where we'd be looking at a majority of just maintenance instead of reclaiming roads? I know you'll still have to, but is there a point where, how many years out would that be to do that?
Yep.
I mean, that would kind of let us know if, we need to invest more, or, which we do, but I think it would be helpful for us to see how many years out that this would take us.
Yeah, we can do that. We've done that in some other
Roads are
communities.
kinda,
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. And you want to use the 1.4, 1.5?
Well, that's where we're
So
at now,
to
right?
get to
The golden
where
spot.
every road in the city is an 80 or greater?
Well, not necessarily, but not like what Union Avenue is now. There's got to be, our investment's got to show it, there's a timeline where, the roads aren't bad in Laconia. Still going to have deteriorating roads, but if we keep investing the 1.4, how far out where we can say is, at this point, you should be pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, so that The difficult task with that is you have the roadways that are in that 0 to 50 range that are already below 80. So really, the first task is, in order to get to that maintenance mode, you're going to have to address those roadways that are below, say 70. Those would need to be addressed. And then you'd be doing maintenance, say crack sealing and surface treatments on the other roadways that are in the 80 to say 70 or 65 range. So you can set up a program to do that, but you're going to be doing some different types of repairs, because if you're not maintaining the good roads, then those are going to be deteriorating over that time frame.
Well, I think that's part of, we were a little laxed in that area at one time, but I think we've done better on that part.
Well, for example, we're scheduled, I don't think this year, but next year, if I remember, to do Union Avenue from Main Street to Messer Street, or not to Messer Street, to,
Guilford Ave.
because we did in front of the Taylor home last year, right?
Yeah, we're going to hopefully be starting that section of Union Ave this fall, if
This
all goes
fall.
well.
All right.
Yeah, Court Street will
So
be
my
first
comment
spring.
there is, and maybe nobody knows off the top of their head, when was the last time we did that? Because my memory is less than 10 years that we reconstructed that stretch of road that we're planning to do again this fall, less than 10 years ago.
It was, I think we overlaid, like from Busy Corner.
Over Avery Hill there, and
That was an overlay. And that was, I can't think of the guy's name here.
It was just an overlay.
Just
at
an
the
overlay.
time.
that was just an overlay?
Just an overlay.
So to get, 10 years from just an overlay that's not too bad.
One of the other things I've observed in terms of some investments that we've made, I noticed this at the middle school because I go through there quite a bit, is that, some of the ceiling programs where some of our major driveways, there are, cracks that go right, pretty large that go through the driveway down at the middle school and a number of different places. And I can just see that, maybe some preventative maintenance around, coordinated with schools, with that patching that you talked about, and I know we have a major investment in the high school we made in terms of, the parking lot there. I think just as we're looking at some of these preventive maintenance things, I think we should look at some of those areas too.
I think we have an opportunity when we go out for the crack sealing bid on this, which we would, to offer it up to the schools to identify, and that's done on a linear foot or total miles or that type of stuff. So we certainly can work to identify some key areas, and hopefully they can find some funds within their school maintenance budget to support those maintenance costs.
I think that would be good. Thanks. That's great.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wes, are you prepared to go from here, or?
Yes, I am. Some of the key points that I want to stress is the predictions in the forecast model, as we've stated before, reflect the improvements only to the pavement. As a whole average, figure about 30% of the costs to whatever the costs are for the pavement, add that to it, and that's really what you need for a program. So if we added 30% to a $1 million program, it'd be $1.3 million, and that would be what you'd need in a year to keep the roads in the conditions that would be recommended based off of $1 million. The issue that we have, of course, in beginning in fiscal year 19, the road program funds will start paying for the bonds that we're doing for the next 2 fiscal years. So for about 10 years, that we'll have a period of time when we'll be having less than $1 million a year invested in the dollars. So the next pieces of the presentation that we'll be looking at for is how do we want to effectively use that $1 million over the next, per year for the next 10 years roughly, to get our best impact that we can for the program and for the city and the residents of the city. So that's what we intend to do for the next piece. To give you an idea, because we had to have something for this year, we put together a plan for construction for this year, and we'll talk about it. If I could have Krista pass it out. What you have coming to you basically takes what was put together in part of the pavement management study and convert it into an executable program for this fiscal year. If you look at the columns as it comes around to you, you'll see there's one column for the fiscal year funding that just tells what funding source it is. The next column is for the construction year that we'll do it in, basically in this particular case, all of 2018. Then it gives a description of what the proposed project is or the element of the project, its location, the type work, the RSR that was from this pavement management study, the length of miles in the piece that we're talking about, and the estimated cost. The first few items that you see there is the overhead portion, and that deals with everything from the loan interest payment down to the ADA sidewalk repair. And you can see what we've allocated in those amounts for the actions that we need. In this case, for drainage inspection, and ADA sidewalk, as well as design work that we need for Pleasant Street. That is money that's taken from it and not into a particular program. As we get the refined estimates for those programs that are below those piece, you'll start to see those allocations drop as we get more detail in regards to what's the actual cost for those elements on the project. When you drop to the first project line, which is Jefferson Street, you'll start to see the objects that we're talking about doing on each street. So for Jefferson, it's a shim. The current RSR rating is less than 1. The total length is about 1/10 of a mile, and it's costing about $900,000. This, excuse me, 9,000. I apologize. So what you see in this is that portion dealing with preventative maintenance, although we are doing some techniques on some roads that are really past the preventive maintenance stage to buy us some time. For example, Jefferson Street really should be reconstructed, but based on the dollars that we have available, we're actually going to shim it to make it a more rideable surface to give us 5 years to get it into the program where we can do something else with it. The same applies to Penny Lane, Leewood, Gilbert Drive. Old North Main's a little different. We've got one area that we want to tackle to try to prevent it from sinking into the mud. And then Sheridan Street is the first of the true preventive maintenance where we're looking at something like a chip seal to give it that life extension that we need without a major cost. If you go to the second page, you'll see the reconstruction projects that we have. That's Merrimack Street, Pleasant Street in 2 sections. Mainly it's in 2 sections for timing pieces. It deals with the school. And then Bowman Street, and which will be starting in the first part of the year. Excuse me, first part of the construction season. And then, because we always plan more work than what we may have in case we do have money come available, you'll see those standby road improvement projects, everything from Lexington Drive down to Village Court. And as we refine our estimates and actually do the work, we'll have a better idea which projects we can pull up into the actual executable program for this year. If you go to page 3, we'll look at the other sources of funding, which is not part of the annual road program. If you look at the city-issued bonds, we've got the 2 major projects for this year. First is Court Street, which right now the plan is as soon as we have construction weather happening in the area sometime probably in April, we'll be starting construction project on it. It'll be basically from Fair Street to the bridge around over Durkee Brook. One change for timing purposes is the area that we're looking at on Union Avenue is from Elm Street to Stark Street possibly this fall. The piece from Union going over the hill to Guilford Avenue will probably be a springtime construction just because of the nature of where it is, and we don't want to take down Court Street at the same time we're taking down that element of Union Street. You'll see another bond project, that's the drainage, the Messer Street Dutile. We're working that now, probably for a construction beginning in drawdown, which happens in October. And then we're also targeting for those roads that will not be touched this summer where we have problems with the sidewalks. We're implementing a sidewalk rehabilitation program to start getting those sidewalks back up to where they should be until such time as we can get to them with a road program. Subject to your questions, that's the plan for this year, and we'll be putting together our analysis for the rest of the presentation of where we need to go for the future years after this.
Oh, you're covering 2 fiscal years here.
Correct.
And
Same
what
construction
assumptions
season.
are you making about the 2018 or 2019
For
fiscal year? budget?
planning purposes, I assume that we had 1.5 million for each year,
For each calendar year.
each calendar year.
In addition to the 2 bonds?
Addition to 2 bonds. The 2 bonds, because of the nature of the 10-year duration, we have to look at projects that have a 10-year lifespan. And those are mainly going to be your major reconstruction, Court Street and Union Ave.
So these projects listed here are all for construction season this summer coming up, 2018, even though it's going to fall in 2 fiscal years. Typically, we might spend somewhere around 2/3 of construction money in the fall season and carry over $400,000, $500,000 to the spring to get us going. This year, we had a little bit of additional one-time money that came back from the state government when they had some surplus that they returned in the formula with the highway block grant, so we received an additional $230,000 or something dollars in addition to what we had budgeted and already going forward. So I think as we looked at cash on hand right now going into the spring, if the number sticks in my mind, it was around
just under 700.
$700,000 is what we had available in cash on hand with dedicated street improvement funds to go into the spring, which is a little bit more than we would typically have going into a spring construction season. And then again, I think Wes has used very conservative assumptions, factored in the component for the drainage, the engineering, any sidewalk work, ADA, and also factoring in the bond payments going forward if that has to come out of the $1.5 million in cash to cover debt service on what ultimately is going to be $2.5 million bonds, and that over a 10-year period, those payments are going to run couple $100,000 a year, right?
Yeah, when we're both going at the same time, it'll be almost $650,000 a year.
$280,000 to $300,000 for one, and then double that for the second. So again, out of that $1.5 million, if that's the number 2 years from now, you're factoring about $600,000 of that is coming out to cover the debt service on the 2 big projects, leaving $900,000, if you will, in operating. And then again, back out the drainage, the engineering components.
So to meet his goal, we'd have to add $600,000.
We'd like to find a way to bump that up. And we've also got that small pot of money in the dedicated motor vehicle registration account that is projected to generate $90,000 a year that needs to go to some kind of transportation improvements that we're looking a couple years out on doing a final piece of the Union Ave project and funding what's going to be another expensive project without eating up all of our operating cash just for one street project.
We also have the impact fees component too that are related to infrastructure too.
We do. Those are relatively small numbers, but yes, we do.
They're starting to grow a little bit.
A little bit.
We took out 20 and had 20 more to come in.
There we go.
So 2000, so you're looking to do Union Avenue out here 2019?
Spring of 2019.
Spring.
And that's just because I don't want to have too many major projects side by side and create problems in regards to detours and everything.
So in what fiscal year would we first see the full impact of that borrowing?
If we issue another $2.5 million in the next budget, which will be fiscal year 19, that would be a partial year interest payment on the second $2.5 million.
Would be 2020.
So 2020 fiscal, the
Where we'd
full
really be out
impact
the
of about
$500,000
$600,000 is probably going to be the impact to it there.
So we need to be cognizant of that looking forward. That's a lot to make up.
For this year.
Yeah, so probably 2 years out. I mean, obviously, 1 year sooner, we'll hit the principal and interest payment on the first $2.5 million. We amortized it over 10 years, and doing the simple math, I'm guessing it's going to be around $280,000 or $290,000 a year in the initial year for that first payment to pay off the $2.5 million over 10 years. And then a year later, depending on the timing, as Donna points out, depends when we issued the bond, when that hits. But ultimately, when they're both running at the same time, be planning on $600,000 as a ballpark number
out of the road
as it
budget.
starts to drop down. So there's an impetus to need to slowly bump that up over the next couple of years so that we can still maintain the buying power while being able to pay off that debt service.
I do have one public service announcement, and that is
Public service announcement.
Yes, the Court Street Public Information Meeting for the piece from Fair to Bridge is scheduled for February 22nd,
There were
beginning at
thousands of
6.
people showed up.
It will be in the third floor of the Belknap Mill. And we've sent out invitations to all the people that are really impacted, ones that we may have to get more easements for sidewalks, and then we send it to all the businesses. So we're hoping to get a large audience for this one.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Anderson?
A couple more key points I just want to point out. I think back to Councilor Hamill's point on this slide here with the 5 colors and the orange in the center. I think that's ideally, Councilor, what you were speaking of, but we want to catch those rows before they fall off the orange. They're more in a maintenance mode there. It's toward I think it's the second page of your packet as it was stapled. So if we catch more of them in the orange, that's more in a maintenance area versus getting into a reclaiming or a rehabilitation. Again, it's not an exact apples to apples, but you're probably getting 3 times more bang for your buck in terms of project completion when you're catching them in that 65 or higher range versus having them fall off. I'll go out on a limb here and say this publicly rather than having Wes or our consultant say it, but once a road hits a condition of 40 or lower, I mean, it can really go from a 40 to 30, 20, and it's going to be terrible no matter what, but you're not doing any real damage by letting the road go from a 40 to a 20. I wouldn't recommend that same advice if you had a small leak in your roof that is going to turn into a bigger leak and do damage. You want to capture that right away. But if the road has already failed, that's why we're trying to shift the focus and get the roads before they get into that failure mode, because our dollars go a whole lot further. And then finally, we do coordinate with not only our water department, sewer is part of Public Works, other utilities. So we are looking at roads, and there may be a need for the water department to go into a road that someone says, hey, that's okay condition, but you know, water might have a pressing need. But we do communicate very well between departments and try to coordinate these activities as well as with the outside utility companies so that there is, you know, a logic. And then, was it the Concord case that went to the Supreme Court, or was it Manchester?
Correct. It was Concord.
Concord actually had a case that went to the Supreme Court about requiring the utilities to do a more enhanced patching repair of a surface road after they've gone in and done the work, and the Supreme Court upheld it. So that's something that we are working on right now to be able to revise our ordinances and our standards to have enhanced repairs that have been supported by a Supreme Court case. So that should be coming to you later on this year at some point so that we can have that on our books, and therefore when cuts do need to be made and there are emergencies and times when they do have to occur, that we can now require a more enhanced fix, if you will, with that. So look
Is
for
that
that.
also towards their normal maintenance of removing and replacing stuff? I mean, not like what they did over here on Church Street there.
I'll get back to you on the specifics to it as to what the court determined, but we are going to have the ability to require a more enhanced fix on those types of cuts.
The little foot wide patches, though,
Yep.
you know, they're terrible.
So,
Anything else, Mr. Manderson?
No, thank you. There's nothing else.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
thanks, Wes.
Okay, we are on to the mayor's report. I'll make it brief. I have a correction to make relative to the committee appointments I made at our last meeting. There was an oversight error on my part. As many times as I tried to count up who was serving on how many committees and whatnot, I still screwed up one. And so I'm going to correct that tonight. And that had to do with Councilors Hamel and Lippman. I mistakenly said that Councilor Hamel would be a member of and chair of the Public Works Committee, and I should have said Councilor Bolduc. So that committee Public Works will be comprised of Councilor Bolduc as the chair and Councilors Bounds and Haynes as originally discussed being the other 2 members of that committee. So the only change is substituting Bolduc for Hamel. And then it comes out as I had intended. The other thing so I'll make those appointments official as of now. And the other thing that I was not aware of was that Councilor Hamill has been the sole representative of the council to the Capital Improvement Program Committee for God knows how many years.
Well, Ava's been there.
Ava has been
Yeah.
too? Okay. So anyway, I was not aware that we had, statutorily, we're entitled to 3 representatives on that committee, and we've basically had 1 or 2. And so tonight I'm going to appoint our 2 new counselors, Counselor Haynes and Counselor Cheney, to serve on that Capital Improvement Committee, which meets only in the fall for a relatively brief period of time. But it's a good way to get an idea, because each of the department heads come in and make their proposals for capital improvements and whatnot, so you can see what the original proposals were and then what survives and makes it all the way through the city manager's budget. Okay, and I offer my apologies to both of you counselors for screwing that up last week, but I think we've got it straightened out now. Okay, how about committee reports? Do we have any committee reports tonight? None? How about liaison reports? Any liaison reports tonight? No? Okay. Now we reach citizen comments on the agenda. This is the appropriate time for anyone in our audience tonight to address the council if they wish on a matter that is somewhere on tonight's agenda. Anyone wish to speak? No? Okay. City manager's report, Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in the council packet for this first meeting in the month, you have 2 reports. The first one is the financial and operational trends. That begins on the page 71. The top portion looks at the net gain in construction value, so new construction minus demolition, and our building permit reports. This is important because it ties into one of the components for our tax cap calculation for the upcoming budget. The assessing year runs April 1st to March 31st, so this report is through January 31st. We have 2 more months to go. As you can imagine, the months of December, January, February are typically slower with building permits just because of weather conditions. So we are at 18.3 million current year to date compared to 16.2 million a year ago at this time, so we're about 2 million ahead, but down considerably, about 10 million from where we were 2 years ago. So again, 2 months to go. I'm hopeful that we will see some uptick in building permits, again, usually more in March as people are getting ready to hit the ground in late March or have their permits in place for April. So looking into the crystal ball, I'm hopeful we can get that number to 20 or 21 million would be a reasonable expectation. Fire and rescue calls. January saw a significant uptick in the number of calls received at fire. We've seen a lot more medical calls this month, a lot of multiple ambulances running at the same time, in some cases even 3 ambulances running at the same time. I think the second piece to that was that real cold stretch that we had right at the end of the year that carried over into early January. We saw a lot of calls going out there for CO2, heating system failure type of things, alarms, pipes freezing. There was a real stretch there where the department was out significantly on those types of calls in addition to the regular workload. Turning your attention to page 72, toward the bottom, you will see property tax collection is at a very strong point. When you look at the 6 or 7 years that are above the 2017 collection to date, we're running at the highest percentage point at this point. So I think that's a sign of where we were in 2011 and 12. We were collecting at just barely over 95 or 95.5%. We're running just short of 97% right now, and I think that's a sign of employment being stronger and the economy being a bit stronger for most people. Motor vehicle registrations, you will notice a slight change to the format this month based on a request from council at the last meeting. So we have broken down the total budget estimate. The total budget amount we estimated for motor vehicle registration was the $2,674,000, and that includes the $5 surcharge on motor vehicle registration that the council adopted during the budget last July, or last June, I guess we adopted that part of it. And that $5 per motor vehicle registration goes into a dedicated account that has to be used for transportation-related improvements. So the 2 columns, we've collected $1,601,118 and change in the actual motor vehicle registrations, an additional $52,000 in that $5 fee. So the total motor vehicle collected to date through January was $1,671,000. Again, we should be at about 58.5 to 59% of our estimate to be on track, and we're running at 62.5%. So that number is running a couple of points higher than we've estimated. And again, we always try to be conservative, and typically we see the spring to be a little bit stronger in registrations. I believe past practice was we see a lot of lease renewals come up in the April and May timeframe, so those months are stronger, and maybe people are getting out of the winter doldrums and deciding they need to go buy a new car in the springtime too, because they're sick of looking at their dirty car in the winter. I don't know, but
Are you setting an example there? Or?
well, I bumped it up. I bought a new car in November, and I gave a nice check to the city clerk back in December and January. So they're tired of seeing. They're
We
tired
needed
of
the
seeing me
revenue
there.
part,
I'm doing my part, Mr. Mayor. The impact fees are on the bottom of page
74?
Yeah, page 4 of the report, page 74 in your agenda packet. So you can see those are dedicated, that we collect with new construction that is subject to the impact fees upon completion and a certificate of occupancy, and for the various causes. So impact fees, when they're adopted by a community, need to be reasonable and defensible and supportable in a court of law as to why you're assessing the fees. They just can't be all across the board because we want to. So based on new construction impact, a certain percentage goes of residential goes to school, police, fire, parks, roads, and library, and a portion of the commercial industrial goes to the segments of those 6 categories that they impact. So you can see current balances in the impact fees. On the next page, you can see the current trust balances in our non-capital reserve, our winter maintenance account, accrued leave, health insurance stabilization, et cetera. Not a whole lot to report on boat registration fees in January, so that number, hopefully ice out will occur soon, and we'll get some boats out on the lake. Didn't seem like January was that quiet, but the way things fell, we only had a couple of significant storms and a few other maintenance events that were taken care of were done during the working day, so we didn't see overtime hours rolling in there. And you can see the remaining balance in our winter maintenance account at the bottom of the page. So through the end of January, we have about $145,000 remaining in those balances. Again, just because we've expended money under the winter maintenance, we could have a sizable amount of salt and/or sand sitting in the salt shed. So it's purchased, but it necessarily hasn't been put down on the roads yet at this point. The second report in your agenda packet of the month is the Economic Development Report. And you can see at the top of page 76, we continue to have very strong numbers in terms of low unemployment for Laconia, the county, a couple of major cities, and the state itself. And I think anyone who pays attention to some of the business news and some of the financial news networks, there's a lot of talk about us being at or near full employment, and a lot of industries are looking for qualified employees to come in and fill. On the second page of that report, on page 77, you'll see that we now have the December inflation number in for the final piece of the 2017 data, so 2.1%. It will be the CPIU that we use for the tax cap. So that basically was the inflation number for the calendar year 2017. So we have one piece of it, and in 2 more months we'll have the building permit piece, and then we'll be ready to be presenting the budget to you all in April. 2 other items for you tonight. One is Governor Sununu had placed my name in nomination, and I was confirmed by the Executive Council to serve on the New Hampshire Retirement System Board of Trustees. That happened at a January meeting. There are 4 different employer representatives to the Retirement System Board. One's for the schools, one's for county, one's for state, and one's for municipal. So I'm the municipal employer representative to that board.
It's all your fault now.
I got big shoulders, but we can have good dialogue on it. But yes, so I'm looking forward to serving on that and being able to share additional information for you. And finally, with my manager's report tonight, I'm informing you that I am reappointing Lenny Minor to the Board of Assessors for a 3-year term that will expire March of 2021. Lenny does a really good job, very active on the board. He's currently chairing it, and he has been a great participant, and we appreciate his continued service on the Board of Assessors. And
Questions or comments for the manager? No? Okay. We'll move on then. New business. Okay, the new business, the first item on the agenda for new business tonight is on page 78 of your packet, and is a request to authorize the city manager to sign order under RSA 155B, hazardous and dilapidated buildings for property located at 173 Franklin Street in Laconia. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a property that's been on our radar for a number of years. First for an abandoned car. We had been able to work with the property owner a few years back and get that removed. There's significant overgrowth on the property. There's some severe maintenance issues in the roof and some openings into the building that we have reports that there's some wildlife now going in. The building is not currently lived in. It hasn't been for a number of years. It's on a very small lot in Franklin Street. The neighbors have been more than patient in trying to see this come to a positive outcome and get some resolution there of cleaning up that property. I did have some contact with the property owner a while back, a couple of years back when the car got removed. More recently, the property owner indicated that she was going to try to get there with some nephews back late this summer and clean some of the growth. Nothing had happened there. We made some attempts at outreach through telephone, leaving messages, sending letters, sending registered letters, asking her to please call and continue the conversation. And we've really just had zero luck in making that, reestablishing that connection for many months now. So I reached out to our legal counsel, and this particular RSA is an opportunity to ask the court to enforce the order that starts on page 79 that would have the property owner repair the building within 45 days or raise the building, or alternately the city would have the ability to go in and perform the work and then assess that against the property.
Any questions before we get to motions? Councilor Bolduc?
Finally, I hope we're going to get this building taken care of, because it is an eyesore, it's dangerous, and somebody's going to get hurt there one of these days.
And again, our first effort is always to try to work with a property owner and not go in and be heavy-handed, but that only goes so far in some cases. I think the majority of people we try to reach out to do respond, whether it's through my office, whether it's through the code office or property maintenance, through the planning department. I know our planning director was out on site along with our fire deputy chief was out there and did some inspections. There's certainly concern for anybody trying to enter that building in case there were a fire or something. So we do try to work, and most of our residents do tend to reach out, but I think this is a situation where the person doesn't have the wherewithal to do it, as opposed to someone who's just trying to get out of doing it.
We have a couple of residents here now that are in the audience tonight that I know that that's what they're here for.
And they have been communicating with me, and they have been patient, more than patient.
Okay, a motion would be in order to authorize the city manager to sign the order under RSA 155B, hazardous and dilapidated buildings for property owned by Rebecca Morse located at 173 Franklin Street, Laconia. Moved by Councilor Bolduc. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, the motion carries. Okay, now we are on to the fun part. Our next piece of business on the new business tonight is a first reading of 9 different resolutions, all relating to income, newfound income, if you will, for the school district. In January of this year, as is stated in your packet on page 81, the governor and executive council authorized expenditure of $10 million in round numbers of public school infrastructure funding. Laconia's share of that was $440,000, I think, roughly.
Yes.
And that money was for life safety projects. This is grant money, fiber optic connectivity projects, and security projects. So what I want to stress here, so every item here that Laconia was awarded falls under one of those 3 categories where they applied for grant money to spend on one of those 3 areas. And what I want to stress here tonight from a budget standpoint is that this is not newfound money for the school district that they can apply to their general fund or put in their general fund. This is all specific to buying certain pieces of equipment and whatnot, so there'll be no cost to the taxpayer, that this will offset, or actually, they do have a copay on this, don't they?
There's a 20% local
20%, I
match
think.
that the schools have indicated they will find within their current operating budget under their maintenance.
So they've got to come up with 80 grand to match these
It's about
grants.
100 and 110, I think.
Ballpark. But I just wanted to emphasize that this is not money that can go into their general account and be spent on other things other than specifically what they asked for the grants for. All right, now, the painful part of this tonight, if you will, is we need to pass 3 different motions for each of these 9 items. Okay? So bear with me, this is going to be painful, and we'll make this we'll make this as short as possible, but, so any questions before we get started about what we're voting on here? So what we're voting on tonight is to pass these 9 resolutions on first reading and schedule a public hearing at our next meeting with a second vote, which is required, would take place at the next meeting. So that's what we're voting on. This is not a final vote. This is a vote to schedule a public hearing, basically. Okay? All right.
Seriously, there's no other way to.
We'll get
To
through
go
this
to,
as
to go to
quickly
a
as we
public hearing, they
can.
have to be done individually.
A motion would be in order to waive reading of a resolution calling for exception, for $110,119, Resolution 2018-2 for surveillance equipment for the Laconia School District. So I need a motion, and I'm sorry, I screwed that up. The motion for that resolution that's appropriate at this point in time is to allow us to not have to read the resolution in its entirety and to read by title only.
I'll
So
make
can I
that
have that
motion.
motion, please? Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say, or please raise your hand. We have 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. All right, we're still on Resolution 02. We need a motion to move the first reading of Resolution 02 on behalf of the city in the amount of $110,119. Can I have that motion, please? Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Lippman. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving this on first reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Finally, we need a motion to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 for Resolution 02 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grants. Can I have that motion, please? Somebody? Counselor Lippman, is there a second? Counselor Haynes, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in affirmative, that motion carries. We're 1/9 of the way there. Okay, next up is Resolution 3, which is $111,443 for 2-way radios. Need a motion to approve Resolution 3 on, to move awaiting a reading of Resolution 3 in its entirety and to read by title only. Moved by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiting the reading of the ordinance, raise a hand, please. Are you voting in the affirmative?
I am.
All right. I was guessing you were. But, okay. Next up is to move the first reading of Resolution 3 on behalf of the city in the amount of $11,443. Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Finally, with regard to Resolution 03 for 2-way radios, we need a motion to schedule a second reading and a public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grants. How about you? This moved. All right. Counselor Cheney makes a motion, seconded by Counselor Lippman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Thank you. 5 votes in affirmative, and Resolution 3 has passed. We're on to Resolution 4. This is for S2 upgrades. I have no idea what that is. for the amount of $10,909. So first, we need a motion to waive the reading of Resolution 04 in its entirety to read by title only.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. Thank you. Next up, we need to move the first reading of Resolution 04 on behalf of the city in the amount of $10,909. And that motion, please, Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And then finally, on Resolution 04, we need a motion to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018, during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public schools infrastructure grants. Counselor Bolduc makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. And that motion carries. So we're 3 down. Next up is Resolution 05, having to do with hardware control systems in the amount of $14,985. So first up, we need a move to waive the reading of Resolution 05 in its entirety and to read by title only. Moved by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Next up is to move a first reading of the Resolution 05 on behalf of the city in the amount of $14,985. Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Lippman seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5. You voting on this one, Counselor?
I did.
Oh, okay. In the affirmative, I assume.
I'm going to stop reading these things. Pay attention.
All right, that motion carries unanimously. Lastly, regarding Resolution 05, we need a motion to schedule a public hearing, second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grants. Counselor Bolduc makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. And any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Okay, we're on to Resolution 6, which is for security glass film. Again, I have no idea what that is. In the amount of $18,556. So the first motion that would be in order would be to waive a reading of Resolution 6 in its entirety and to read by title only. Counselor Bolduc makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. All right. Next up is to move the first reading of Resolution 06 on behalf of the city in the amount of $18,556. Can I have that motion, please? Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Lippman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up, with regard to Resolution 06, is to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grants. Counselor Bolduc makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. We are on to Resolution 07, having to do with door hardware. Wow, $171,222 for door hardware. So the first motion regarding 07, Resolution 07, would be to waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. Counselor Hamel makes the motion. Counselor Bolduc seconds it. Next up, regarding Resolution 7, is to move the first reading of this resolution on behalf of the city in the amount of $171,222. Have that motion, please. Counselor Lippman, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. You guys are wondering why you ran for city council at this point in time, aren't you?
I can't wait till I have all these public hearings.
Yes. I'll line out the door.
I think I'm sick that day.
All right, we're on to Resolution 08, which is for panic buttons at a cost of $13,792. So first move would be to waive a reading of Resolution 08 its entirety and to read by title only. Moved by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Next up would be to move first reading of Resolution 08. To the first reading of Resolution 08 on behalf of the city in the amount of $13,792. Counselor Bolduc makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Hands are getting tired at this point in time, I can tell. That motion carries unanimously. And lastly, regard to Resolution 08, we need to move to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grant. Could I have that motion, please? Councilor Bolduc, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Thank you. So we're down to 09. Resolution 09 is cameras for Laconia High School at a cost of $54,932. I assume those are security cameras. So first up for Resolution 09 would be to move a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. Councilor Bolduc makes that motion. Councilor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. We have 5 votes in the affirmative. The motion carries. Next up for Resolution 09 is to move a first reading of this resolution on behalf of the city in the amount of $54,932. Someone make that motion. Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Bolduc. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. That carries. And finally, with regard to Resolution 09, we need to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grants. Councilor Cheney makes that motion. Councilor Lippman seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. We have 5 votes in the affirmative, and that carries. Lastly, Resolution 10 is for Laconia Middle School security cameras in the amount of $34,855. First step is to move to waive a reading of Resolution 10 in its entirety and to read by title only. Councilor Bolduc makes that motion. Councilor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously. Next up, with regard to Resolution 10, is to move a first reading of this resolution on behalf of the city in the amount of $34,855. Councilor Bolduc makes that motion. Councilor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Getting tireder by the minute. And that motion carries unanimously. Lastly, with regard to Resolution 10, we need to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the public school infrastructure grant. Motion made by Councilor Lippman, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously, and all 9 resolutions have been approved. Thank you for your patience.
I think the schools owe you one.
Yeah. Okay, we still have one more school thing to vote on, and that's Resolution. All right, it says 10 here, but this must be 11. Because we've covered 2 through 10.
She agreed to this.
It should read 11.
Should read 11?
Yes.
All right. So this is Resolution 11, which is a school supplemental appropriation, and that's on page 91. So I'm assuming, Mr. Manager, that what we're doing here is authorizing the appropriation of the same amount of money, $440,813?
Correct. Typically, if we know of grants both on the city and school side with a budget adoption, we have them there. These were unanticipated, so that's why it's a little painful tonight in coming to you. So we need to move the grants, and then we need to amend the budget after it's adopted, you need to amend the budget to reflect this amount so that it comes in as a revenue and it can be offset by the expenditures the school will be making. So it's a housekeeping matter. It will have no impact on the tax cap or anything.
We're simply upping the appropriation for the school district for this fiscal year.
For
to be
those
offset
amounts,
by this
yes.
grant money. Okay, everybody understand that?
Just,
Councilor Lippman?
I guess just technically in terms of the tax cap allocation, that does,
There's no change because this is non-property tax revenue that's coming in. It's state grant money. So there's no change to any of the tax cap calculations. This would not be exceeding it,
Nor does it become part of their base?
nor does it become part of their base.
that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, a motion to be in order to waive the reading of Resolution 11 in its entirety and to read by title only. Someone make that motion, please. Counselor Cheney makes it. Counselor Lippman seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, motion carries. Thank you. Nextly, with regard to Resolution 10, we need to move the first reading of this resolution for the supplemental appropriation in the amount of $440,813 for the Laconia School District for security and safety infrastructure improvements. Counselor Bolduc makes the motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion?
That would be 11, not 10.
I'm sorry?
11.
11?
Did I say 10?
Yes.
All right, this is regarding Resolution 11, my fault. All right, we had the motion and made by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, with regard to Resolution 11, we need to schedule a second reading and public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular City Council meeting to gather input prior to accepting the supplemental appropriation. That motion is made by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Lippman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next up is on page 94 of your packet and has to do with the Native American statue in O-Pee-Chee Park. And if I read this correctly, we have had donations to the city of $840 to be spent on repair and restoration.
Yes,
Correct?
we have.
All right, any questions about what this is about? I have one question. What happens if they just tear it down?
We would probably have a record of the folks who donated it, and we would probably offer them to get their money refunded if we didn't restore it, or if they wanted to leave it for another park-related use, they would have that option.
Okay. As I understand it, there's going to be some sort of an X-ray or something or other, or a CT scan of the statue to see what the state of the rot is?
Well, we want to get an internal view, yes, to see what it's doing.
Okay. Everybody on the same page on this one? Okay, motion would be in order to schedule a public hearing on February 26, 2018 during the regular council meeting for the unanticipated revenue of $840 received by the city for use towards the restoration of the Native American statue at O-Pee-Chee Park. Moved by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And lastly, under new business, improvement of Union Avenue Elm Street intersection. And that is on page 97 of your packet. I'll recognize the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, discussion about that intersection many months ago now about the traffic flow, and it seemed to be backing up, particularly on the Union Avenue northbound direction. So we had a traffic engineer take a look at it, especially in conjunction of doing road repairs out there. We wanted to bring some options to you. Again, as you had heard, we are looking potentially to start construction in that area this fall. We don't need a decision on this tonight, but we would like a decision no later than 30 days from now so we can incorporate any changes that there may be into the construction documents. I did let the council know a few weeks back that we did go out and tweak that timing of the signal at the intersection right now to help the queuing of that north and southbound movement a little bit more. It seems to have had some positive impact, and I hope you've had an opportunity to go through and look at it. This discussion tonight is about an extra turn lane and/or spending some money to synchronize the Elm Street, Clinton Avenue signals, whereas right now, if you're on Elm Street, a green light comes on, but you don't necessarily have the left turn arrow, even though Elm Street is the only movement at that point. Everybody else is on red. So the person coming on Elm Street who's looking to make a left-hand turn doesn't necessarily know they have the right of way if they see a car at Clinton Street. They don't realize because they don't have the green arrow. So there's some things we could do in that sense in addition to turning lanes. So we don't need an answer tonight. We wanted to get it out there, but we will be looking for determination as to what direction the council would like to go with that intersection within the next couple of weeks so we can incorporate that into construction documents. And I'll let Wes talk through the finer points of it.
Mr. Anderson.
Okay. I hit the wrong piece. Here we go. We're really going to talk two items tonight. One is the completed improvements that we've already discussed, and the other is the possible improvement options. The interim improvement that we did was basically improve traffic flow by changing the traffic signal timing. We actually had a consultant come out, they set up the camera, did an analysis, happened after Labor Day, and what they did is they came back with a series of recommendations that we implemented. Basically, the two key ones are we implemented a time of day and a day of week. So the timing signal changes between what time of day it is, rush hour, not rush hour, and whether it's either a weekday or a weekend. And the way it's set up is the weekends, thinking of the future for tourist season, is set up like it's a prime rush hour for work hours. And the other piece is we adjusted the timing of the phase. Some phases were shortened and other timing was lengthened. And it was implemented on the December 5th, so anything that you've seen, anything you've done and driven past it, that's the new timing that you're seeing right now. The other piece to it is we're looking at doing conjunction with the capital improvement project from Union Avenue to Elm to Stark Street. Just rapidly go through what we're planning to do there was stabilize the road bed, reconstruct the road, expand the stormwater drainage system, because that's really what's causing the problems from a structural standpoint there. We've got some sanitary sewer system improvements that we need to do, and then the piece that we're really talking about tonight was improve the traffic flow through the intersection. We'll get this down pat yet. Okay, so we studied the intersection. Our consultant did Beta Group, and they really determined there were two causes. One is the combined left turn and through lane for southbound traffic. That's traffic basically coming from Waterworks towards downtown. That's southbound. And then a short turn lane on the northbound traffic heading from downtown towards Waterworks. To do our planning, we made some assumptions, and we looked at some other restraints in regards to the physical nature of the intersection. The assumptions included using only the existing right-of-way, the railroad tracks remain active, no left turns are restricted on Union Ave. By that I mean no southbound making a left turn into Fratello's or Clinton Street. And we can eliminate some on-street parking. We just made that to help with the planning stages. Some of the restraints that we know we had to deal with is we cannot make a right turn on red for southbound traffic when the train's coming by. So that's part of the system that has to be built into there.
May I ask what trains you're talking about?
It's still an active railroad, Mayor. We still have to have the system in it. So it's a requirement we won't be able to get past. We got to minimize impact on the historical buildings that are in there, and we want to minimize impact on the retaining walls. What happened is we had three feasible options. Then we had another option that was a combination of a couple of the other options. Okay, first option was basically a signal timing change. We had some safety elements that we were considering also. We would have no turn on red from Clinton Street going on to Union Avenue northbound. If you look at it, to really see to make the safe turn, you're sneaking out almost into the lane. There would be no right turn on red with an illuminated sign. So in other words, as you're coming southbound from Waterworks heading towards downtown, you can make your right turn in red, which is currently prohibited. But if the illuminated sign came up, because there was a train coming by, the illuminated sign would light up and it would prevent and protect the people from trying to make the right turn.
Somebody would have a heart attack.
Somebody would have a heart attack, but we do have to do that. Let's see, where was I? And then we was combining Elm Street and Clinton Street into one phase. So basically, we're saving the timing in that additional phase, putting it with the Elm Street, and the whole circuit would work faster. So basically, the improvements are due to signal timing in this case. The advantages, minimal costs, but the disadvantage doesn't address the major causes of the problem. Okay, so that's the map that you see right there. So there's north. So if you're heading from downtown toward, whoops, I did it again. Heading from downtown towards Union Avenue, that's northbound. If you're heading from Irwin Marine or the Waterworks downtown.
I don't think we're seeing your mouse on the screen anyway.
Okay.
So
Got it.
Save yourself some hassle.
So thank you. So if you're heading towards that southbound. So basically, if you're looking at it, it shows the recommendation for no right turn in red. The signal would be changed there with an illuminated sign to allow the right turn in red from Union onto Elm Street, unless, of course, the train's coming, and would have no other, I have to say it, no other aspect would really be physically changed. Not true on the next one. It's really a lane flow pattern change. So Union Avenue southbound is presently a shared left turn with a through lane. So basically, you're coming south, you can make your left into Fratello's, you can make your left into Clinton, or you can go straight ahead. And then you have the right turn only for southbound traffic to get onto Elm Street. The concept behind this, you'd have a shared left and through and a shared right and through, and then you merge after the intersection. Would also, as part of that, we would lengthen the left turn lane on the northbound traffic, because if you watch it a lot, people will go across the double yellow lines to sneak up there. The improvements are really due to the 2 through lanes and the 200-foot taper on the southbound side of the intersection that allows the 2 lanes to merge back together. The advantage to it, it really increases the number of traffic that can pass through that intersection. You still will have a constraint there because of the merger after it, but it's going to help. The disadvantage, the southbound vehicles turning left can still stack traffic in that left lane. We're going to have to relocate the sidewalk on the west side, the park area.
What happens to the right-hand lane?
It would be through and right. So you'd have
Through and right.
You'd have a left and through.
So you're going to eliminate the parking spaces
on the 6 parking spaces that are on the south side of the
by that green
intersection.
apartment building.
By the correct.
But you're also gonna cause people who get in that right lane and go straight to hold everybody up.
Correct.
Going.
Yep. There's no good solution to this. It's the best, or a suboptimal solution.
Well, right now, if you come to the intersection in the right lane, I'm sorry, if you come to the intersection in the right lane, you can turn right.
Right.
Yep.
But if people in the right lane are waiting to go ahead, then they're holding up everybody behind them who wants to go right. And in my limited experience, traffic can become a combat sport.
Well, what I would add to that as someone who travels that or did travel that lane every day between the north end of Union Avenue and downtown many times, at different times a day, the traffic that takes that right-hand lane compared to the traffic that wants to go straight through, I'm making up a number, but I would guess it's at least 10 to 1, at least 10 to 1. So we have right now, in effect, a dedicated lane for relatively few cars that are turning on Elm Street. And meanwhile, traffic trying to get through to downtown is backed up forever at times.
There's no question that's true. But the other part of that problem is the parking spaces on the other side that create some of that.
Yes, I mean, that's gonna be the big rub there, is because I remember the brouhaha 5, 10 years ago, whenever it was, about removing the spaces in front of the old pharmacy building there, the Opera House. You know, there were like 3 or 4 parking spaces there, and there was a huge outcry about that. So certainly, we're gonna hear about it if we propose eliminating those parking spaces on the other side of the street. There's plenty of width to that road there on the other side, on the south side of that intersection.
Correct.
I mean, the road is plenty wide, but those parking spaces that are on both sides of the street narrow it down.
Their apartment, they just apartment parking, that's what that is.
There's one apartment building, well, two, I would say those parking spaces cover 2 apartment buildings and 1 commercial building that's frequently vacant.
And the minute it snows, they start moving out even farther into the lanes. That's the other part of the problem.
I'm sorry, we interrupted, go ahead. I
Okay,
interrupted.
so if you look at the map, you can easily see that we got 2 lanes southbound. One is left and through, one is through and right. That's really the major change there. Okay. The next option is add a lane. You're keeping it the same width, but you're basically narrowing down the lanes to add a 3rd lane in there. So what you're gonna have is a shared left, what you got right now is shared left and the right turn lane. You're gonna go from that to an exclusive left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane. Okay, so the improvements are due to a dedicated left turn lane. It gets that left turn problem out of the issue. The advantage, the left turn lane is not gonna block southbound traffic. It's not a factor in it anymore. You still have to relocate the sidewalk. You still have to eliminate the 6 parking spaces on the west side, and you still got to narrow the parking spaces on the east side. The issue that you have is, and you'll see that in the next one, is you're going from 12 feet lanes to 10-foot lanes for all 3 of the lanes. Got it. Go back. Oops, go back.
Is that legal?
Yes, barely.
Barely.
The disadvantage is, and I've experienced this before, one of the other places I've walked, is when you go to 10-foot lanes and all 3 with the amount of truck traffic that's on that road, mirrors are going to be knocking like crazy, and they're going to have side swipes.
And we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that is an issue.
And when you try to turn off of Elm onto Union going north,
it's a challenge.
Jesus, that tractor trailer, it can't be done.
Yeah, you
It's
never,
hard now.
never do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the 3 options that we looked at. You can see it here. You've got your dedicated left turn lane. You
Can
got
we
your
get a copy
through.
of this map?
Pardon?
Are we gonna get a copy?
We
of
can
this?
give you copies of the map.
It's hard to see from here, at
Okay.
least for me.
Okay, so what we basically recommend, and we don't need a decision tonight, is really a combination of 1 and 2. What we want to do is make the safety implements, the no right turn to red on Clinton Street. We'll do the illuminated right turn on red signal, or the no right turn on red signal for the turn onto Elm Street. Then we want to put Clinton and Elm Street in the same phase, and then make the shared left and through and the shared right and through, and then merge on the other side. That's the recommended option we have.
Option 2.
That's a combination of option 1 and 2. We're implementing both elements to it.
And the total number of parking spaces that are lost?
6.
And they're all on the
They're all on the west
west side after you cross the intersection along the park?
Right. Basically, they're park side. We'd have to move the sidewalk on the park side, and we'd have to narrow the parking spaces on the east side to 8 feet, which would be tight. Now, we really don't need a decision tonight, but keep on the timeline we have for this project, we would need a decision by March 12th. What do we want to do here? And we can discuss it further at the next meeting if you so desire, or come back with questions, answers to any questions you have. April, we're planning a public input session. August will be the second public information session to get ready for the project. We complete the design in August, and then we're looking at to start this one sometime after September if feasible. As we get the design further along, that'll tell us what our construction period is, whether we can finish it before winter, or we're gonna have to stage construction, do a part of it before winter, and then another piece once spring hits, before turf season comes in.
And we can get maps out to them in the
Yep.
next day or so. Okay.
Questions?
Questions, counselors?
We'll have another public hearing on this so that the people can be here to speak to it.
That's up to the council on that, but we are set up to have a public input session where we listen to them, which would be in April, when we have enough of the design done to at least give an initial concept, and we'll have
Council would
another.
have to approve going ahead before then, though.
Correct.
I mean, you're talking about your public input
Input
session.
session, right.
I think Counselor Bolduc is talking about our public input session.
So I think ideally then, if we could look to have this on the agenda for February 26th and have the council provide consensus, and that way we can kind of be referred, we could, whether we call it a public hearing or just call it a, public input session. And the differentiation is a public hearing, typically you need to advertise and post where you could get the same bang for your buck and just call it public input and post your suggested recommendations, and then allow the public to come in and comment on that at March 12th, and you could have a final decision.
So I would offer that we don't need to pass anything at the council at this point in time. That what we need to do is get the word out that DPW has proposed doing this and what the details of it are, and then schedule a public hearing for the 26th or the first meeting in March.
As long as there's consensus, we're happy to do that. If there's no objections to putting that out as the preferred route, that
So this
changes
is
the.
DPW's recommendation that we would be taking input on. And then we would make a decision.
Most of that's gonna be in Ward
After
2
that.
instead of Ward 6. Ward 2 is going into Laconia.
So that way we can blame everything on you.
That's what I'm here for, sir.
Do you want an official public hearing, or do you want it on as agenda item that this was presented, the council is presenting Public Works recommendation for public input? Is that, and we could put the maps of the preferred and the changes?
Consensus on that, I think that's what we're talking about, is saying DPW has made this recommendation, we'd like to hear from the
Okay,
public.
we can arrange it that way without officially calling it a public hearing, but seeking public input on the items.
Right.
Okay. And we'll get you all copies of the maps in the next day or so.
Yeah. That'll be a fun night.
Can we include in that map, if you're gonna redesign the sidewalks and the parking, can you?
We can give you a little outline of where, kind of, sort of. Yeah, it won't be exact, it'll just say.
It's fine, but yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this subject tonight? Thank you.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay, that concludes our agenda, except for council comments. Are there any council comments tonight? I don't know if the two new councilors are aware of this. but
Yes.
This is the
Yeah.
time when
I
you
would,
can-
I would.
Councilor Haynes?
I attended the pageant like you did, and Pam Clark should be commended. That was a wonderful night. Enjoyed it nice. And the young ladies did a fantastic job.
Yeah, quite a singer.
Yes.
Amazing. She sang an Italian aria that was beautiful. It was very, very well done. A Laconia High School sophomore, whose name is Sosa's the last name. I can't remember. Alexandria? Was it something?
Cassandra.
Cassandra. Okay, Cassandra Sousa was named Miss Laconia 125 or whatever they're calling it
Yes.
for that in that pageant. So, congratulations to her. We'd like to. We'll have her some night here and recognize her during the year. Anything else? Any other council comments? Okay. We are at the end of our agenda tonight, and this is what we're going to do now. We have a need for two meetings, two private meetings after this meeting. The first meeting will be a non-public session under RSA 91A to discuss a matter that, if discussed in public, would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body. So we're going to have that meeting first, and then then we'll come back into regular session and we'll adjourn the meeting. And then after the meeting is adjourned, we will have what is euphemistically referred to as a non-meeting under New Hampshire law, which allows a public body such as ours to hold an unofficial meeting, if you will, for the purposes of discussing labor negotiations. And so that's the purpose of the second meeting. So that's what we've got to do yet tonight. So I need a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A, item C, which is the matters if discussed in public would likely adverse the reputation of any person. Moved by Counselor Bolduc, seconded by Counselor Haynes. And any discussion? All right, we need a roll call vote on this, so I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll, yes or no, to go into non-public session.
You can do the roll call first.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Bounds? Counselor Littman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Counselor Baldick?
Yes.
Mayor Engler?
Yes. All right, we are in non-public session. And as soon as
Nope,
we're settled
everything's
here,
off.
I'll